So, hey everyone, thank you again for attending ArcBlock Devcon 2020. We've actually been really excited about the upcoming panel that we have here. We've actually brought together a group of experts who each have a unique insight into blockchain and the government. Leading the panel is our host of the session is Ari Yu, chairperson of the Washington Technology Industry Association's pioneering Cascadia Blockchain Council. So Ari, thank you so much for doing that, and it's all yours.
Awesome. So we're attempting to look at the role of blockchain technology and the impact that it has on local, state, and federal government levels. And so we have a wonderful, esteemed panel here with us. I'll let you guys do the introductions, but let's start off with Charles Chen, who's doing a lot of work in DC on the federal level. Hi, Charles.
Hello. So my name is Charles Chen. I am the Director of Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technology for the State Department in Washington, D.C.
Awesome. And then we also have below me, Ian Griswold from the WTIA, who leads a lot of the government affairs work. Ian?
Sure. Hey, well, thanks for having me, first of all. So I manage WTIA's government affairs function here in Washington out of Seattle. We do a lot of different sort of public policies that affect the tech sector. So anything from tax policy, regulatory policy, access to talent, things like that. Mostly focused at the state level, but we do also work in the federal and municipal level here in Washington too.
Yeah, and for context, the WTIA stands for the Washington Technology Industry Association and is one of the major sponsors of my organization, which is the Cascadia Blockchain Council. It's the largest technology industry association in the US, powering over 1,100 technology companies. So really, really cool work. And then least but not last, wait, how do you say that? Robert Mao, who is the CEO of ArcBlock.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming to our developer conference. And it's really my honor. So yeah, as you all know that I'm working on the blockchain technology, right? So I try to work hard, write coding to support all you guys. And Ari, thanks a lot for having us in your organization for a long time. And yeah, so we did a lot of interesting stuff.
Yes, and I love all the work that ArcBlock is doing to continually give back to the community. Really, really exciting work that you guys are doing, both here locally and also internationally in China. So really, really, really proud to be working with you.
Thank you.
So, oh, and then we forgot Steve Albonico from Boeing. He works with Boeing. Why don't you give the intro?
Yeah, hi, I'm Steve Albonico. I currently am responsible for blockchain operations at Boeing. Prior to that, I worked 10 years responsible for technologies for a regional police fire 911 department in California. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. We have a wide breadth of good experiences. And so I'll just dive into the questions, which is the current state of blockchain and government. I think that's a topic that we're all trying to figure out. Where are we today? You know, we're in a pandemic. There's a lot of changes happening both globally and also locally. So how should we be looking at this government and blockchain? Maybe I'll start with international scene. Robert Mao, you have both the international view and also like working here in the US, or are you frozen right now? Oh, no, you're not. Okay.
I'm not, yeah. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, so it's actually I'm from the industry, right? So this is a government topic. Start for me, it sounds really interesting. So, but anyway, so from what we see, so from what we see, I think from the technology side point of view, I think for the US, since the NIST released that white paper, I think that's a NIST IR 20 something already. That's basically in year 2018 October. I think from that on, we have seen there's quite a few federal government projects that is related on the blockchain. Right. So before that, there's a department and agencies that have these kind of trials, but all of those kind of projects seems to be some kind of trials. But since that white paper has been released from the NIST, I can see more and more projects that seems to be more serious about it. And the other trend happened in China, which is actually last year, because it's a dramatic change. Because before last November, blockchain is still kind of like illegal or kind of always related to scam in China. But suddenly, in last November, there is some kind of a change from the policy. Basically, blockchain become a national strategy for China. So in the last couple of months, we have seen there's so many new blockchain projects that are sponsored by the government, and the proposals, RFPs from the government, all about blockchain. And recently, there's an important meeting by the China government. I think they just finished last month, and during that meeting, I think there's around 50 different proposals by the experts, to basically propose the central government to kind of invest on the new infrastructure that is related to the blockchain. So yeah, that's all I see. But so far, from the industry point of view, it's just the beginning. So we don't know what exactly it will lead to. And a lot of new players, especially those big players, they're all coming to the blockchain space. So that basically also means more opportunity and also more competition.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing, Robert. I think let's go to Charles, a man of science and technology working in federal government. What do you think is happening in terms of blockchain and technology and in government, the federal government perspective?
So, the federal government was very late in the game when it came to the cloud adoption that time. When we had lots of conversation about cloud, 5 years into it, the federal government kind of danced around. We finally got into it. And once they realized the value, they really jump onto it. So it is somewhat of a catch up. Blockchain is unique in that the federal government recognized the adoption of blockchain. So it's really going into it. And just like what Robert mentioned about NIST, I think the biggest challenge with any new technology with the federal government has a lot of structure and guidance. We don't implement system just to deploy it because it works. We have to do information assurance, the governance, for example. The auditor needs to define what is it that they're auditing. So a lot of these rules and procedure simply doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. So even though we recognize the value of blockchain, and we'll see deployment of different blockchain system here and there, for the federal government to be fully embraced, I think a lot of these rules and policy needs to be developed. One of the things that is fortunate and unfortunate about blockchain is if you go to the federal government today, lots of people will know, yes, I know blockchain, versus cloud 5 years ago, nobody knows cloud. The unfortunate part is they think that we're talking about Bitcoins. So there's a misconception in that blockchain is Bitcoin, but reality, Bitcoin is just part of blockchain. I think there are now some drive in the technology part to recognize the decentralized nature of blockchain and utilize it beyond just cryptocurrency, right? However, leading that effort, you will hear a lot of the economic development within our agency. The econ branch is more interested in blockchain than the IT branch because they're more interested in what are the social and the financial impact, the monetary policy, and so on. So the good part is the door is open. The policy for cryptocurrency is leading into the interest in blockchain. I think for us, the challenges is going to be we need a blockchain platform. Instead of painting a new world, totally new way, it's a very difficult part to approach any large entity of the federal agency to change something very new and drastic. However, if we have a pre-existing system and we can introduce using blockchain technology to increase efficiency, reduce the cost, expedite the process, for example, documentation workflow, for example, or expedite internal financial transfer. We do money transfer internally. It's a very grueling process. And it takes longer than me walking to an ATM, I'll say that, by 200%. So a lot of things out there is of interest. I would say certainly as of today, the government is not against blockchain, but they're certainly exploratory, interested. But unlike a cloud-based technology today where we have well-defined big players out there that has lots of tool set that is available. Blockchain is still very early, although it's growing very quickly.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, but I'm going to go on to Ian next, and then Steve, and then come back to you on another couple of questions. So,
All right.
Ian, you've been working on the state level, and I think we've seen a lot of different, I guess, perspectives. Maybe you can share the state level, at least from Washington State.
Sure. Yeah, definitely happy to. So, similar to Charles's point about kind of early stages of deployment here, a lot of states have, or I would say early stage as well. I would say that most of them that have started to do blockchain policy have done sort of, I would call, pilot projects. So some great examples, I know Delaware is experimenting with blockchain as it relates to corporate registry. I know Illinois has, and so their state agencies have deployed blockchain projects as well as it relates to deeds, health provider registries, things like that. So early stages, but there has been, I guess, the proverbial toe dipped in the water as it relates to trying out some of this technology. Colorado did something that we attempted to do. We were this close, as Ari knows, this past session, and Colorado set up a working group, and that brought together government agencies, lawmakers, folks that work in blockchain, varying companies, big, small, what have you, and really try to convene those folks to create kind of what is public policy going forward in that particular state look like as it relates to growing and cultivating blockchain. We had tried to do a similar bill this past year in the legislature in Washington. We were very successful. We had a lot of folks come down and testify, both in the House and Senate. The bill passed unanimously, I believe, out of both the House and Senate, and it was set to be signed. And then, as everybody knows, coronavirus hit pretty hard around the country, and the governor vetoed the bill, and vetoed a lot of other bills that were set to cost the state money. So a little disappointed here, but we've done good work so far in Washington State about getting distributed ledgers, legal recognition, and we defended that this year as well. So we're in good place there, and I imagine we'll continue to try to build that connective tissue between state and blockchain practitioners in our state as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Ian. And then Steve, you come from the industry. Obviously, Boeing is investing in blockchain, which is really great. So as much as you can share with us on that front. And then I also know that you have some experience working with some of the different organizations, or maybe city-state organizations. I can't remember in California. What's the state of blockchain, I guess, from your perspective?
So I believe from a government perspective, from the California or from a regional or even from a national standpoint, you're seeing optimism. I think you're seeing movement. Obviously, things are a little slower right now due to the environment. California itself, I believe that their blockchain task force is about to submit their report early next month. So that's big news. I know they've done a lot of hard work and a lot of research there. So that's exciting to see what they come up with. Really where I come from was more the public safety realm, criminal justice and whatnot. And a lot of regional, local and state government is led, their R&D efforts and something like this is led by two different places. The first place is by policy and mandate, which is something that you can really see come from a lot of the policy work that's going on, a lot of the mandate work that's going on, but a lot of it's also driven by R&D within the vendor space. And there's a number of different things, specifically in California, you're seeing accountability becoming a large piece. I believe there's what's known as the RIPA, which deals a lot with racial profiling data and sharing that with auditing agencies and other agencies, looking into how can that be shared via multiple agencies, via multiple governance structures, different technologies on the back end. There are places there where vendors are taking a look and seeing, hey, does blockchain possibly give us a way forward from a cost standpoint, from a return on investment standpoint, Also, from the criminal justice standpoint, you had the IGIS group, which is a national interface for court systems. Do work. They released a blockchain white paper. I did a little bit of work with them to get a proof of concept up and running for protective orders on a proof of concept blockchain. It is slow, obviously. You know, a lot of these things kind of take time. They need a lot of support and sponsorship. And I think even in the private industry and in the public space, you need some sort of a central authority to kind of get behind something, get behind an issue, kind of guide it and push it, put the resources, the time, and the effort to say this is a legitimate problem that we have, and this is a legitimate solution that we're going to put time into supporting and giving that feedback on. And I think in the government space, we have a lot of pieces coming together. I don't know that we have that one large agency or organization that is really pushing hard for a blockchain solution that could really make it mainstream technology at this point. I think we're getting there, but I'm not sure we're quite there yet. There was some question that maybe blockchain could have come in and done some work with contact tracing or other health department needs. Not sure, maybe just the timing was just a little off. I don't know that I've seen, I know IBM's done some work in that space, but I don't know that I've seen the adoption yet, but we'll still see there.
Thank you for sharing your perspective, Steve. So then I guess that leads me to another whole set of questions, which is, I mean, we have two people representing maybe the public sector here with Charles and Ian, and maybe two representing more of the private sector with Robert and Steve. What can we do, public and private, to help accelerate the adoption with our own government here? Is there anything that we can do together, or is it a state thing, or is it a federal thing? How do we kind of consolidate this effort holistically? Maybe I'll start with Charles.
That's kind of my response. So I'll be very honest in that the federal government, we do engage with the state level and even up to some local government, but just like what we mentioned earlier and what Steve alluded to, really we're in the early stage right now. I'm not sure if there's really a consistency today in that type of working level yet. I think everyone agreed that this is a technology that is up and coming, is legitimate. It's really could bring a lot of potential cost saving, efficiency. I just don't think that guideline today exists yet. It will get there, but we are a little bit early. I want to say we're probably about a year away from having something substantial. Certainly, I would say even among federal agencies, we all are willing to collaborate. In fact, General Services Administration, GSA is kind of like the glue that kind of stick all the federal agencies together. GSA started a listserv in 2019 specifically for blockchain, but that level of collaboration today is only on the federal level. We're not there yet in regards to the state and the local government level.
Why don't we just invite the states? I mean, we have lots of states that are interested. Bring us together.
COVID-19.
Oh, well, throw us on the email list, no?
Yeah, I think that's definitely worthwhile to explore. In fact, I think beyond just the federal versus the state or local government, there should be a greater collaboration on that public-private collaboration. Government could explain their challenges. They don't publicly say it, but there are always challenges in any large organization. But we may not have the talent to go out there and develop the solution. I think having that private-public collaboration could really drive that technology and change quickly.
Right. I mean, blockchain is all about the network effect, right? So it really does involve, us coming together and working together. I guess maybe the state perspective with Ian, what do you think? How do we move the ball forward,
Sure.
Private sector, public sector?
Sure. So the work that we put in this year, I think was probably the best way to try to kind of build that connected tissue, like I referred to earlier. So establishing a work group by edict of law, basically, is a forcing function to get folks to actually speak. And look, people have competing priorities. Government is in the business of delivering services and any sort of other functions that different departments have. So getting them at the table can be difficult, especially now, right? So there's a lot of challenges that are happening outside the blockchain world, just globally, and that makes things difficult. But I think a work group is a really good function. I think that it's a good forcing function to get folks in a room to talk. They usually have a report that has to be produced at the end with legislative findings. There's usually some sort of 1 year, 4 years, 7 year kind of window of what policy looks like. So that's a good function. I think the other function, or the other way to sort of build that relationship too, is I just said that the government is delivering services, right? Like it's the main purpose of government is to deliver services. I think there's a component of continuing to just do the work, right? So government is, in my opinion, is always going to probably be later to the game in adopting things than folks in the private sector. I just think that's kind of almost a truism. So I think there's a component of continuing to just do the work and sort of government will follow. So if you identify projects, and we're doing this soon here in Washington State as well, if you identify projects that kind of speak to the things that government needs help with, so like titling is a good example. And these things are not like, quote, sexy, right? But these things are very important, right? So for example, if a municipality is trying to keep track of contracts that they've issued out, right? There's obviously a great blockchain solution that can do that, right? So if you continue to highlight what blockchain can do and just put it into practice, I think that goes a long way as well. So creating some sort of working group function, building those relationships, and then just doing the work, I think kind of, if you do the work, they will follow sort of thing. I think there's a lot of truth there to that as well.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. How about Steve? You have your industry and your government experience. So what can we do?
I think on both sides, it really comes down to needs, specifications, and sponsors. A lot of projects like this, working groups are great. They build you the policy, they build you the what can we do, you even get some proof of concepts out of this. But to make that jump from a proof of concept to a production operation, you really need to have a specification down. Are we following all of the information protections policies? Are we actually achieving needs and goals that are laid out in some sort of specification? I think where you really start getting vendor involvement in what Charles was saying, to really pull in those specific skills, you bring in a vendor set of skills for these specific pieces, whether it comes from hosting, operations, building, even building of the governance models and the federation of those security principles. You really need to start laying out specifications. What do we need these networks to look like? What do we need these implementations of chain code or contract to look like? And what problems are we going to solve specifically in a space to start with? What sponsorship are we going to have? Where is that agency that's going to take the lead role in bringing the other agencies to the table, to establishing that governance model, to overseeing that top layer of, if you're talking about a private permission model, who's going to take over that top layer, and who's going to push for the operational model that we need to make sure that we keep enough servers and other infrastructure running and in place. Those are the kind of pieces that need to start kind of forming up. And I think that is in progress with the working groups, the task forces, with the interdisciplinary groups that like the technology associations that are kind of stepping in and offering help. You also have another piece in the university system. You have a lot of blockchain groups that are starting to spring up within universities that are coming up with a lot of great ideas, a lot of looking for reasons to build these proof of concepts to kind of get their feet wet. There's a lot of innovation there. And like any of these new technologies, it's how do we get these to a place where it's effective and we can get that feedback loop going so that we can start building into an operations model of something like this.
Sort of like we're looking for trust mechanisms using a trustless technology. I guess that leads me to another question. So a lot of things in this space, I believe like identity is the key key thread that we need to unravel that'll help us with the adoption on the enterprise front and the country level front in terms of consumers and people, citizens. So maybe Robert, like, what do you think is the thread that'll unravel this picture and get us moving more quickly in terms of adoption? Is it identity? That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, so from my point of view, I think identity is a very important technology. So actually identity itself, especially the decentralized identity itself, it actually does not really need blockchain.
Oh,
But yeah,
okay.
but it works best with the blockchain.
Okay.
So actually, if you especially talk to a lot of government and the enterprise use cases, where you discuss with them, hey, what do you really need? Some of them say, hey, we need a blockchain. We need to have the data on the blockchain. We need to have the verification on the blockchain. But actually, when you kind of dig inside it, is actually they're not actually need a blockchain. They need an identity solution. They need some kind of a signature and verification solutions. That is not necessarily to build on blockchain, but the identity is definitely something they really need. However, blockchain is a technology that can just make things much easier. Right? So without a blockchain, you can still do it, but there's always difficulties here and there. But with the blockchain, you basically you can solve the problem with a better way. This is just like the internet, right? Before the internet, we can still communication, right? So our people's life, we still live the life. People are still live happily, right? But with the internet, and nowadays, a lot of people say, no, I can't live without the internet, right? So many years ago, maybe people say, hey, I can't live without a telephone. But imagine just 100 years ago, all of those are not exist. I think as a startup in the blockchain space, I just add a little bit about the question you asked before this one. I think it's for us. I think it's we really try to do this from the grassroots level. What means from the grassroots level? There's two things. First is building something that is working, right? Not just showing the theory, imagination, vision, but instead say, hey, here is something that is just work. And then when people, they're not very familiar to the technology, they see something that is actually real and actually work. They begin to understand and they begin to say, hey, shoot, I have this problem. Maybe I can use this technology to solve this problem. I found this is very, very useful, right? The second part is education and the evangelist, right? So I just go to the events to speak for blockchain, to explain what blockchain is. Like we put together this developer conference, is basically we try to put people together to see, hey, what ArcBlock has already done. This is something that you can actually use today, and then some ideas, coming out. Like today, we have the opportunity to invite Charles here. Actually, 3 years ago, I met Charles because in an event I'm talking about blockchain, and then Charles happened in that conference, and then that's the story how we connected. Right.
Awesome.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool, right? So when you show up, show the world what the blockchain is, what it can do, and then people come to you. In China, we also figure out another way. Probably that doesn't work in US. In China, myself and one of my team member, we write a book. We actually write 2 books. One book just get published this month, and because in China, once you have a book. And actually, the book was recommended by quite a few VIPs in the industry and professors, and so that helped us to build the reputations. So when people they read the book, they see what's your opinions about the blockchain, what exactly blockchain is, and they begin to understand it better. And then that's actually help. That not only just help us, it's also help the whole industry.
Cool. Yeah, I think you've done a lot, and I hope to see and continue to see a lot of impact and in the community. I guess a lot of things that we're talking about, like private sector and public sector coming together to like move the ball forward, and how do you work with government, state, local, federal, but maybe like extract even further. Blockchain is one of the emerging technologies. And so, there's blockchain, there's machine learning and AI, which is, another hot one. And then there's XR, which is, virtual reality, augmented reality. I feel like this is one of the technologies where we actually want to like partner with these other emerging technologies more often. I actually pitched the Allen Institute CEO, and I said, hey, we should, have a professional marriage and talk blockchain and AI. And he said, no way in hell. But maybe I want to put the question to Charles. What do you think about that idea?
So AI is literally what we do extensively right now. I mentioned earlier, blockchain is the door is open for blockchain. AI basically already kicked that door wide open. So there's a lot of commonality in the collaboration space that I foresee blockchain will fit in nicely with AI. It's also a good leeway to bring in this technology. Like what I mentioned earlier, if you're a company, you come in and you say, I do blockchain. They're like, so what cryptocurrency are you selling? If you say, I'm using a distributed ledger technology, distributed computer with artificial intelligence, machine learning, data mining, now we're talking. Now they start to understand and they perk up the interest. I think AI integration with blockchain fits in nicely with some of the key topic. For example, cybersecurity is always very hot. We talk about data loss prevention, the fact that blockchain could provide that immunity in regards to not altering the record and having the AI to detect, is there someone else, a bad actor coming in to try to alter or influence the blockchain network or the framework? I think those are very helpful. Another part, and now I'm going way off. Federal government, we have very strict guideline in regards to data retention and record policy. People could put in what we call FOIA requests, specific keyword for specific email and whatnot. So we have very stringent policy in regards to keeping that record. Mm-hmm. What I found out the hard way, because someone yelled at me before, was we also have very stringent record, stringent policy in regards to destroying that record. Meaning, for example, a data set says this record must be retained for 25 years. On that 25 year and day one, that record better be destroyed, like unrecoverably destroyed. So this is where blockchain also fit in very nicely in that, yes, it's immune from alteration from others such as bad actor, yet at the same time, because of the encryption that's built into it, we can simply destroy a record, right? So I think it fits in nicely, and AI is a good pathway for blockchain technology to complement each other going into these bigger projects. In that AI right now, it's much more defined. The policy is further along, and AI, people would think of automation, increase efficiency. And today, if you talk about blockchain to increase efficiency, that's a further pathway for commoners to correlate that relationship. Having the two implement each other only enhances both type of technology framework. So I think this is certainly the right pathway to go.
Cool. Thanks for that perspective, Charles. I guess I'll leave it up to who wants to volunteer to answer, or I can pick someone.
I'd love to jump on what Charles was saying. I think I 100% agree with what he said. I'd also like to throw in IoT is another big piece of that puzzle. I think the earlier question about decentralized ID, that is, I think, a piece of zero trust, which I think is another thing that is becoming a larger piece of this advanced technology stack that we're kind of striving towards. And I think that blockchain or decentralized ledger technology really does play a role in bringing a lot of those different technologies together. Data provenance being a very large piece, like Charles was saying. Not only being able to prove that a record was destroyed, but being able to prove the provenance of that record along the way. What changes were made to it? What was different? What is the same? How did that record evolve without losing what it was in the first place? And how can we prove that it was no longer changed along that way? And I think that really is another big piece of this puzzle.
Hey, so I would like to add on to what Steve mentioned. IoT is a great topic in regards to that combination, the relationship with regards to blockchain, especially the identity. It's a machine. It sends you data sets. But gathering that data set, coming with AI needs good data. Without good data, your AI simply doesn't work. So without biased data, you need to authenticate the source of that data, which in this case is IoT. It's one thing when we're talking about IoT from a perspective of, a thermostat. Yeah, it's a little hot. But on the DoD side, they are starting to develop, I believe, IOBT, Internet of Battlefield Things. And that has a lot more greater impact. So coming back to the blockchain and the identity, I think having that true validation of those sensor and devices will make a significant impact. And that is a very open area today that is worthwhile to explore.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to see us make progress on local, state, or federal level. I mean, just having seen the world through the travels, there's a lot of countries that are making quite a bit of progress compared to the United States. And so I'm worried a little bit. And I'm also hopeful hearing you guys talk. Robert, maybe you can, is China already moving forward with AI and blockchain? Like, how far along are they?
Yeah, so I remember one of the interesting jokes that I told in the Chinese version. Today's AI, a very important way to make the AI work is the deep learning. So from the computer science point of view, the deep learning has some kind of problem because you know it worked, but you don't know why it exactly worked. Right? Like for example, the autopilot, the automatic driving cars. So today's deep learning based technology, you have some kind of algorithm, and then you feed a lot of data, and to kind of build this kind of use machine learning to build this kind of neural network, and then eventually, so this trained model how to drive the car, but it's not compared to the traditional algorithm, which can be mathematically proved. It's very, very different, right? So this is like a very opposite world of today's blockchain. For the blockchain, you suppose you don't trust anything. Everything needs to be verified, right? The private key and public key, the digital signature, all of them are basically like that beautiful mathematically, can be mathematically proved. It's so beautiful, it's so precise, accurate. But the AI is from different side. It works, it just works, but we know it works, but we don't know why it works. So then there's a few years ago, and there are people thinking, okay, AI is going to kind of destroy the world, because eventually, when there is more and more stuff that come into the AI come to the automatic driving, the AI maybe come into the weapon, come to the defense system, radar, everything, right? Eventually, the whole world is taken over by the AI, and we don't know why this AI make these decisions, right? So for the automatic drive cars, so when there is some car accident, people have the analysis why this car make this kind of wrong decision, why it crashed. But then, in this case, you see, it's so important. If there is something that have the immutable data, that has the data that can be trusted, can be eventually either for some kind of final step of control, or it can be some kind of audit log. You can eventually analyze what happened, right? So this become a complementary technology that AI make the kind of automatic decisions, but the blockchain basically is like a control. It's a last defense to make sure that computer and AI do not destroy the human, right? So this is a joke that I tell in Chinese. Hey, okay, AI is going to destroy the world, and blockchain is going to save the world, and then they work together to make it a perfect computer technology.
It's a really interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing. I think we have to do a time check and start landing the plane. So maybe I'll ask each of you to give some perspectives, I guess, maybe some advice for the developers and people that are out there watching this, recording this video. And what do you think? How can we each individually as developers or working in different companies or whatever role that we're doing, what can we do to further the work that we do to help other people, help the community, help governments, help with adoption? How should we be thinking about this? And maybe I'll, I don't know, who wants to go first? Ian.
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, appreciate it. So Robert said something that I really resonated with, and I would give anybody this advice. And Avery, I know you know this too, when we went to Olympia. A lot of people want to see blockchain in action, right? And so I think to the degree that Robert mentioned, getting a product up and running, showing that it works, mentioned meeting Charles and kind of building that relationship there. That's exactly the sort of thing that has to happen, right? People want to see it in action. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing that's really important is, and again, this is from, I'm going to not speak for the government agencies for a while. Let me speak from just a legislative perspective here in Washington State. At least in Washington, we have alternating long and short sessions, so 60 days and then 120 days. And thousands of bills go through the legislature during that session over any sort of topic. And it is a total madhouse, really, for the duration of that entire session. So if you're trying to legislatively address blockchain, and whether that's, I mentioned working group, or whether that's a fix as it relates to maybe a financial sort of issue, or whatever sort of angle you're coming from, I think the really key point here is to show how the technology will benefit the citizens of that particular state, or whatever jurisdiction you are going before, and how this technology is different, how it fits in to other technologies we're talking about today. I know folks, Steve mentioned IoT. So in any of that sort of that conversation, how the interplay between those technologies are to things that are being discussed. Look, our legislature is talking about AI, voice technology, automation. All of these issues are at play in our state's legislature. So the degree that we can talk about that holistically, to the degree that you can show that blockchain really benefit the community, I think that's where you're going to see a lot of success.
Thank you for sharing, Ian. Who wants to go next? Charles, Steve, Rob? Charles?
Sure, I'll go next. So first off, for the developer, I want you to know you're all smarter than I am. I'm probably the dumbest one in here. I do wanted to say that I cannot speak and represent the government as a whole, but as an individual who has seen through lots of technology coming through the pipeline, I think one of the easiest thing to do is to simplify the approach, meaning there could be a very complex network. If you go into full-on detail how the technology works, at the end of the day, the decision maker is not going to understand anything. So having very simple, short, abbreviated sessions on this is how you do things, and maybe it's 10 steps. What blockchain, look how much quicker it is, and look how simple it is. The second part is, I know blockchain mostly is Linux-based, lots of command line, lots of CLI, looks really difficult, and I feel intimidated too. Pretty GUI, believe it or not, makes all the world of a difference, because those decision maker, look, why is Apple more successful than their type of computing? Because they make really good GUIs. They are reliable, but at the end of the day, they're pretty. So having product out there that is simple to understand, that address an immediate downfall or concern or issues that people are facing today, improving efficiency quickly, for example, or just making their work easier. That's all that matters. Keep a focus in a very simple, easy to explain format. Well, when talking to the leadership, I think it will drive the progress much further. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm hearing be human, I guess, relatable, and also realize that people are people and they can only handle so much information, especially when they're really busy looking at thousands and thousands of bills, as Ian said. So be human, relatable, and make it at least a semi-pleasant experience, right?
Make it pleasant, yes.
How about Steve?
Yeah, like Charles and Ian said, find a need, become a champion for it, and show, don't tell. Whether it's a small need, whether it's a large need, find one that you can really own, find one that really means something to you, build that solution, make it something that someone can understand, find that use case, and distill that into a short demo and prove it from its very basic point. And from there, it will grow. Gain people's attention with something short, something that makes sense, something that makes an impact, and then it will grow.
Cool. Show, don't tell.
Yeah, awesome. I think this question is basically designed for our ArcBlock platform, right? So our goal from the day one, our goal is we focus on building the platform. We make the building blockchain applications super easy, and we build a completely web-based interface. So the developers, when they get started, and they don't need to start from the command line, so everything is web-based. So all they need to do is focus on on building the business logic, right? So that's so this question, the simplest answer is come to ArcBlock, use ArcBlock to develop something that is just worked, right?
Thank you for all that you do, Robert and ArcBlock. And I'd say also from my perspective, like bring people together. Like let's not work in silos. You know, I'm really passionate about blockchain, as we all are in this meeting. But you know, let's partner with AI, and let's partner with other groups. Let's partner with government. Let's partner with the large companies like Boeing. Let's work with the nonprofits like the WTIA and private companies. So as much as possible, like put your hand across the fence and build bridges. And that's how we'll really affect change together. Cool. Well, I really appreciate your taking the time out of your busy evening during the week to chat with us and share your thoughts. And if anybody has any questions, I'm hoping that people can find you. So maybe like, what's the best way to contact you? If people want to ask you direct questions, like your Twitter handle, or I guess if you're comfortable with it, email address. Ian, you want to start?
Sure. So if you go to washingtontechnology.org, there's a lot of staff pages. I'm on there. I'm the only person listed doing government affairs, so I'll be easy to find. And yeah, just please do shoot me an email, and they're happy to answer any questions and talk further.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Ian. How about Charles? What's the best way to reach you? Twitter? No?
No, best way to reach me is through an email. So you can email me at chenc@state.gov. That's CHENC@state.gov. I do respond to every single email. So yes, I go through like 700 emails a day. But that is the best way. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. And Steve?
Email's good for me, steve@albonico.net.
Can you spell it?
ALBONICO.net. Or just LinkedIn, Steve Albonico. They'll pop me right up.
Thank you. And Robert, what's the best way for people to reach you?
Yeah, the best way is email me, rob@arcblock.io. And I also have my Twitter account, and come to our website. It's easy to find me. And don't worry about those email and Twitter handlers. So in the DevCon, the super director, we're going to put the TV overlay below each of the talks. So audience will see that. Don't worry.
Awesome. Great. Okay. Well, thank you for your time, and have a great evening.
Yes.